this, and there's not a better time to have this conversation now more than ever. So thank you so much for everybody that's joining or watching the replay. We are thrilled that you're here, and we hope that this is helpful in some form or fashion. If you find it helpful, please feel free to share this with anybody that might benefit, as we're here to be of service during this time to help us all work through the collective grief, loss, fear, anxiety that we're all experiencing on some level. And today I am joined by Rachel Hall. She is a licensed mental health counselor at Pathways to Healing Counseling. She specializes in trauma. She works very heavily with first responders and really is a pioneer in working with departments on their mental health programs, first safety departments on their mental health programs. So we are thrilled to have you here today. I am Kristen Boice. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I own Pathways to Healing Counseling, and we work together on the regular, and I couldn't do life without Rachel. So I'm so excited she's here and joining us for this really important conversation on how to work through fear and shame that we all have. So Rachel, welcome to our first Facebook Live.
I know, it's a big experiment.
Here we are. We're doing the first. And this says a lot in terms about people working through firsts, because as we do things for the very first time, we're going to have a lot of fear. There's going to be fear, and we have to work through our own fear even to do this in order to do these first experiences. So we've been doing a lot of praying, a lot of breathing, in order to be able to handle just some of the anxiety and fear that comes with doing this even for the first time.
Yep, absolutely. I think I know I spent a lot of time yesterday just going, well, there's that emotion that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. All that fear in my body, just to put yourself out there like this, it just feels very vulnerable. But if it's for a greater good, then you and I are both in for it. So.
Absolutely. So let's talk about fear and the collective fear. What are you noticing with clients and friends and family that you're in connection with right now around fear?
I think the thing that I've been noticing, even pre-pandemic, this topic of fear really started being unpacked for me, I'd say, 2 to 4 months ago. And just a lot of things that I was hearing consistently from clients, a lot of things I was hearing consistently from society as a whole, and kind of just in my own body, I just kept going back to fear. And fear is this underlying emotion that drives so much of human behavior. And, what I've really kind of peeled back, I think, is that there are a couple layers of fear. And there's the core emotion of fear. And I've heard you talk about this a lot, with Mayor Jensen and some of the things that you've done. There are some core emotions that we all kind of pop out into this world, able and capable of experiencing. And fear is one of those. And then there's this other level of fear, kind of a framework or a spirit of fear that I think really is something very different than the core emotion, because it's connected so deeply to shame. And so what I really kind of feel like I'm discovering, it's not like I've discovered this for the first time, but for me to discover myself for the first time, is that all shame comes with fear, but not all fear comes with shame. And really, like I said, that spirit of fear, that framework of fear, that's what really hinders us from growth. It hinders us from healing. It hinders us from connecting to the core emotion. And once we can connect to that core emotion that's really just designed to keep us safe, to inform us, and move us through a pretty scary, difficult situation sometimes. That's the point of the core emotions. Once we do that, we get to healing, we get to freedom, we get to that exhale, right? And so really, if we can kind of delineate, am I functioning from this framework or this spirit of fear that's just so deeply intertwined with shame? Or is this just the core emotion of fear. I can acknowledge it, attune to where it is in my body, breathe through it, and I can be released of that. I think that's really what I want people to understand, is that as we dig deeper into fear, not all fear is bad fear. The fear that is deeply connected to shame is what we really need to work on and acknowledge for our own mental health, our own physical well-being, and just growth in general.
Absolutely. I think it'd be helpful to define what shame is. Shame says there's something wrong with me. I'm bad. I'm defective. It's about yourself and who you are. And so that's why a lot of times we worry about what other people think, because we're worried. That's the fear. What are they going to think of me? What if I say this? Then are they going to be mad at me? Are they going to reject me? Are they going to abandon me? And so the shame, saying I'm not enough, something's wrong with me, I'm bad, I'm defective, can block us in so many ways. And that's why that fear is so intricately connected to that shame. I think that's...
Absolutely. That shame causes us to write stories. And so it isn't so much that we can distinguish, are they going to reject me? I've already written the story in my head that yes, they are, right? They are going to reject me, and they are going to hurt me, and they are going to cause me pain, and they are going to be angry with me. And so I function from that story that already says, yep, that's what's going to happen. That person thinks this about me. That person is saying this about me. The shame is so powerful in our story writing. And so sometimes it isn't even a fear of what could happen. It's that I've already written the belief in my mind that it's going to. I hear that a lot from clients. I know this person. I know them really well. I know this is what they're thinking. And we write that story. It's self-preservation, right? If I prepare that this is what's going to be the outcome, then I can protect myself. And so we keep ourselves in that very hyper-vigilant amygdala fight, flight, or freeze state, just based on the stories the shame wants to write in our heads for us.
Yes. And I think when we do that, we are shutting that nervous system empty. So if I can say that's the true story, then my brain can go, okay, now I can protect myself. Like you said, now I can protect myself because I'm certain that's going to be the outcome. And we're doing a lot of that now. We're trying to predict the future so that our brains can write that story around that, and we can feel safer. What we're actually doing is creating what we don't want. And we're creating that fight, flight, or freeze response. We're creating that analysis paralysis. It doesn't really protect us from shame. I mean, it doesn't protect us from shame, judgment, blame, or the future outcome.
We can worst case scenario things until we're blue in the face, and we are not going to be any more protected when the actual outcome happens. We just, like you said, we're in that mode in our brain that isn't our highest level of functioning. It's survival. It's the amygdala that says just get through the moment, and we constantly live there when we let these stories, these shame stories, based from our experience, right? I mean, people have patterns of behavior, and we need to be wise to acknowledge people's patterns of behavior and set healthy boundaries. However, the shame keeps wanting to go, well, they did that once. I called myself a one and done for years, where someone might cause harm to me, like emotional harm more than anything. And I was done one time, and it was done, because the thought in my head was, you're going to do that again. I don't like how this feels. And so this is the only way I can protect myself from more harm, is to completely disconnect. And so I was a fleer from that hypervigilant amygdala state. And all that does is it stops deeper connection within myself to my core emotions, and it stops deeper connection with other people.
How did you work through that? I mean, how did you get to the place where you're like, I'm out of here, I'm done with you, I'm going to cut you out of my life, to breaking that pattern?
I went to grad school to become a mental. I'm kidding. That helped. I mean, I've basically, grad school for us is some of our own therapy. And so, definitely a lot of conversation, a lot of tuning into the deeper thing. What is really going on here? Like this, just kind of pausing and breathing and getting to know my own emotions and getting to recognize, I call it being off center. I have a center point where I know I'm in balance emotionally, logically. I know that I am kind of functioning at my best, and I've learned what it takes to stay centered. What has also happened then is that I have learned very quickly when I'm off centered. It's when I'm reacting more out of anger, when I might be a little bit more gossipy, when I might want to air my opinion from a hurt place versus a centered place. Those are my warning signs that I'm not functioning from my center. And so when I'm off, I just have learned strategies through a lot of therapy talk, a lot of therapy work, a lot of being real and honest with myself and being open to other people's feedback. I just think that, there's been a lot of growth personally that has helped me be able to go, this is not, something's going on here. I've written a story from a not centered place in my head, and I'm functioning from that story. And what works for me every single time is just that deep breath that you and I are huge proponents of. Just the in through your nose and a really good slow exhale. And then I just can go, all right, I'm okay. I'm okay.
So it sounds like, I mean, this is what you and I talk about a lot, is recognizing our own shame, recognizing that story. Oh, there it is. And Brene Brown calls them, she kind of pioneered some of this language we're using, the storytelling and the writing the story, and recognizing the shame spiral. Because I can go in and I'm deep in it. I mean, it's like the shame is taken over and I'm in the spiral. And I'm convinced we think I'm not worthy. I'm not important. I don't matter. No one cares. I mean, we can go on and write the story, right? You recognize, you said, I can see my tells. I think that's really important, to know you're in shame, to know you're in fears, to recognize it. And then it sounds like you've worked on ways to kind of soothe yourself instead of going into that self-protective place of cutting off other people. You've learned to kind of do that for yourself. You've learned to acknowledge your own feelings. You've learned to kind of soothe yourself through that and know that's not, and sometimes, I mean, you have boundaries as well. What's okay, what's not okay. So you know how to handle it and what you're going to do differently instead of doing the cutoff.
Right. The key component there is how quickly will I register that I am functioning off center, that I'm functioning from the shame story. I mean, I'm not perfect. It will take me some time. It's all the years of work and of doing this and of learning and growing has made it take less time, but it's certainly, I can linger there for a long time sometimes. Really depending on the depth of the woundedness, that whatever the situation kind of pushes on, right? Like it kind of pushes on the wound. And if it hurts bad enough, my body's response is just like everybody else's: defend and protect. And so as quickly as I can figure that out, usually when I hear that voice, it says, well, you aren't whatever enough. You aren't good enough. You aren't happy enough. You aren't calm enough. You aren't pretty enough. You aren't smart enough with this. You aren't confident. Whatever the not enough story is, when I can begin to identify that, then I really can say, holy cow, I have just spent how long in my shame spiral? And then I just take that breath and it all starts to settle down a little bit. And once I'm using my breathing to kind of settle like you said, settle the nervous system, then I can access all these other beautiful resources of logic and truth and sense. And it's really, like I said, just a very well balanced total body sort of perspective.
What do you say to people that are afraid to connect to their emotions, because that seems maybe we weren't raised that way. We didn't talk about feelings. We didn't really go there, or we were maybe disciplined out of that. There was some punishment when we felt our feelings. There was disconnection. Maybe there was some abandonment. How do you help people that are afraid to connect to feelings?
Well, I hear a lot of times from clients and family members and friends, I hear, if I go there, it will drown me. I have covered them up. I have disconnected for so long. I don't think I can go there and survive. And I say, I know it feels that way. Absolutely, it feels that way. And that's just not truth. You will survive that. It'll be hard. And, I have a running joke with some of my clients. They're like, you made me feel these stupid feelings. I know. And they are not fun. And it's for the best. I feel like a parent sometimes, right? Where I know this sucks, but it's for the best. And it is hard. It is not fun. It is not, there are a lot easier ways to cope. And that's what we're drawn to. We are drawn as humans to quick fixes and instant relief. And sitting and acknowledging your feelings and breathing through them is not instant relief. And yet it's what our bodies feel best with.
So, and I think we can talk about self-compassion and empathy in this place where we begin to start connecting to these emotions, and we're like, I want to go binge on Netflix. I want to get on my computer. I want to get on my phone and all the things. I'm going to go in the pantry and eat this or that. I mean, we all have our ways that we move away from emotion. And we need to talk about kind of self-compassionate empathy. Speak into that a little bit on the role that plays, and how do people begin to do that for themselves and other people?
Well, and empathy is different than sympathy, right? Sympathy says, oh, you poor little thing. How are you ever going to survive that, right? Like that's the worst thing. And Brene Brown, you talk about her, she has a fantastic little 3-minute cartoon clip on the difference between sympathy and empathy. It's one of my favorite things. I even sometimes make police officers watch it. But empathy really is just acknowledging somebody's hard. And I have this little thing that I keep saying to people: lead with empathy. The rest will follow. Just lead with empathy. And that means lead with empathy for yourself, self-compassion, instead of beating myself up and having this toxic, unproductive self-talk. You idiot. Why are you know better? What are you doing? That can't be my self-talk. I have to be gentle. I have to nurture myself and say, okay, all right, you did it again. And we're going to learn from this again. And you're okay. You're okay. I understand why. I understand the wound that this pushed on, right? Like, I understand that this feels like you were 12 in that situation when you were 12. I get it, Rachel. It's okay. And so really empathetic self-talk is important. And I don't remember where I saw it, but there was a research article that said the most productive self-talk is when you actually call yourself by name. And so I really encourage that with people. Call yourself by name. And it's like you're having a conversation with your best friend. If we can get to that place for ourselves where we can just go, boy, I know that's hard. I know that's hard, and you're going to be okay. The rest will follow. The power of empathy. I don't think we really get it until we experience it. And so just lead with empathy for yourself. Lead with empathy for others. That doesn't mean excusing behavior. That just means, gosh, I know that's hard, and I can connect with you on that level of hard, and we'll get through it. And then life lessons will come afterwards. I don't have to skip empathy to teach my kids a lesson when something's happened. If I don't lead with empathy, they're never going to receive the lesson. And so if I can just kind of get people to breathe and then lead with empathy for self and others, I think it's a game changer.
It is. And I think people are like, well, I don't even know how to do that. No one talked to me like this. My mom or dad never talked to me like this, or I never have had anybody show me that empathy. So I don't even know what it looks like. I gave an example of one time when I was at the grocery store. I think I've shared this with you. And we were in a truck, and the step came out automatically. And I'm loading the groceries up, and bam, it hit me right in the shin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with my younger daughter, and I took a deep breath because I could have said something else. I mean, clearly in that scenario, and it wasn't her fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. And what I did in that moment, I said it out loud. This is because I practice this. Isn't it because it flows naturally? It's because I've practiced talking to myself. So my empathy for myself was, okay, that hurt. You're okay, sweetie. You're okay. Breathe. Just breathe through it. You're okay. And my daughter's looking at me like, what in the world? And I was like, you're okay. That hurt. That really hurt. Oh, that's going to leave a mark. You're all right. Breathe. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay to have your feelings. I'm saying this out loud. If someone saw me in the grocery store parking lot, they probably think something was wrong with me. I didn't care because that is what helped me deal with the pain. So we all have pain. We all have fear and shame. No one gets out of that for free. And when we can talk to ourselves like we would talk to a little human being, like we would talk to our best friend, that's what helps that fear and shame go, settle down, calm us down. When we yell at ourselves or we scream at ourselves or we shit on ourselves, that keeps me stuck in that shame, and the shame grows. It's like... Or if I feel like I can't say how I really feel, that like I can't acknowledge the fear, I can't acknowledge my pain, that keeps that shame growing exponentially. So that's an example. I know it sounds cheesy. It's literally a life giver because no one else is going to do it for you. We expect our husband, our spouse, our wife, they don't know how to do it because it wasn't done to them. And when we can start doing it for ourselves, it flows from our soul. It starts pouring into, and then our relationships get better. And the most boundary people have the most empathy. So the most boundaried, what's okay and what's not okay, that allows us to have more empathy. If we feel like we're being taken advantage of, if we feel like we're being manipulated, it's hard for us to be empathic to other people or ourselves. So the more boundary we are, the more empathy we have.
It's funny because you and I talk a lot about how often we are nurturing our inner little girls. And that what I've noticed as you were talking, you call your sweetie a lot and I call mine pumpkin. And it's just, it's just as though pumpkin, I know where that's coming from. You're okay. And I call people in my real life pumpkin when I'm in my most empathetic place. And again, working with a lot of first responders, I'm sure they're going, what? Why are you calling me pumpkin? It's just the natural, like I've softened to that person enough to be able to go, oh, pumpkin. I know that is so hard and you're going to be okay. And it as you were calling yourself sweetie and relaying that story, I'm like, she calls herself sweetie a lot. I call myself pumpkin. So
that is funny that we notice the difference in what we call. That is when we're in our most empathic self. I mean, our most self-compassion. We know self-compassion is the antidote to shame. It is what settles the shame. It is what calms the nervous system. It is what allows us to connect at a deeper level to ourselves and other people. And yet we're not equipped for it. No one teaches us this.
Right.
So we're learning on the job to do this for ourselves since we weren't really shown how to do it. And I think right now, as we're in quarantine, and there can be a lot of shame that gets triggered by parenting, by being a spouse, how would you advise people, or kind of what are your thoughts on helping people do this while they're in quarantine with their family? Like offer empathy when they're being like, you're driving me nuts. And we're kind of on edge a little. How would you help people show empathy and lead with empathy?
I think it's critically important to start with yourself because, where we are and what we're kind of what we're digesting for ourselves is really the overflow that's going to come out for other people. And so and you mentioned, nurturing ourselves and we sometimes, not sometimes, I think we all think this because society says it this way, that someone else should take care of how I feel. And when we're children, that is true. Like we are designed to need nurturing from other people to get us through childhood. when we don't get that, we kind of get stuck there emotionally, and we just kind of keep waiting for the next person, the next job, the next accolade, the next hairstyle, the next, the next milestone at the gym, whatever it looks like. We're waiting for the next thing to meet that need. And when we can let go of that expectation, because in reality, as adults, even when someone pours into us, if we haven't poured into ourselves, we don't receive it the way that we really need to be receiving it. And so it's never enough coming from someone else. And so being able to pour that into ourselves, find a sweet little nickname that you can call yourself. And every time you get ruffled, you just kind of go, oh, sweetheart, I know you're okay. You're okay. And you didn't respond well to that. And that's okay. Let's just go make it right. And then you go to your kids, you go to your spouse, and you just own what's yours to own and say, I didn't handle that well, and I'm really sorry. And if they come back at me because they haven't self-soothed or they're having an intense emotional response, when I can take care of myself, it doesn't feel quite as personal. It doesn't feel as personal of an attack, because I can look at it and go, they need to tend to themselves a little bit right now. And I'm going to give them the space to do that. I'm not going to write another story in my head and get stuck in that spiral that says this is all about me and he hates me and he's leaving me and she's, she thinks I'm the worst mom, and, whatever that might be. We just kind of keep centered, keep ourselves in that safe space that says, it's okay. This isn't all about me. I'm tending to myself, and then I'm gonna make good on what I can, right? Like if I've hurt my kids, if I've done something stupid, I need to make that right. If I have caused harm to a friend or a stranger or my spouse, I need to make that right. And I can do that once I've recentered myself, nurtured myself through it. I can own it, because then my entire worth and value isn't dependent on owning that mistake.
And I think that's a huge piece. In order to get to ownership, we have to be in that prefrontal cortex. That's the rational part of the brain. And so the way we get to that rational part of the brain when we're maybe fight, flight, or freeze or reactivity is through that breath, through that centering. And then I can take ownership and see clearly. It's like my perspective changes, like, oh, yeah, I need to take responsibility for what's mine. Then you can start teasing out what is your stuff, what isn't your stuff. You don't need to say what's not your stuff, but you're clear on what is yours. And you can do something about that. You can acknowledge. We talk a lot about acknowledgement. So when it comes to fear and shame and any other core emotion, acknowledgement is critical. Mm-hmm. And that looks like saying, that makes sense, you feel sad. That looks like saying, tell me more about that. Let's let that out. It's okay to have your feelings. How do you help people learn acknowledgement?
I don't typically have a cookie cutter way of doing that. So let me think about that for a second. I think every single person starts this journey where they started, and everyone is different. And so sometimes, to be honest, we want a very easy checklist, cookie cutter. Here are the 7 steps to live at your healthiest. And it just doesn't exist. And so I think it's just so important for people to understand I'm starting where I'm starting, and it doesn't have to look where they're, like what they look like. And it doesn't have to look like what, my spouse looks like or my coworker. I'm just going to start where I'm starting. And I think if we can practice that deep breathing, even before we feel dysregulated, if we can wake up and take 5 deep breaths, if we can at lunch take 5 deep breaths, if we can at, every mealtime, every time we're in the car, every time before bed, instead of waiting to get dysregulated, start training your body that deep breath is what gives me peace, what keeps me centered. So doing that as a regular practice versus as a reactionary coping strategy is a big way we start to be present. And if we're not present, we can't acknowledge anything. And so really it's foundational, right? I have to be in this moment. So how do I stay in these moments? And that deep breathing, it's magical. It's almost like it's by design.
It is. It is the one thing, like I'll be in the car and the girls are like, nah, 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 nah. Like, they're like, mom. And literally I'm not going to respond until I'm regulated. And that may be a little bit. So I may be going, now we're not driving anywhere now. They're in the house doing that. So, and that's not very often, but some people are living. I mean, the siblings are going to get into it. They're going to have their moments. And the first thing I do is like, okay, breathe. And I will say to myself, just breathe, just breathe. Now, does it always go that smooth? No. I mean, let's not paint a picture that I'm not human, because that clearly is the case. That's not always the case. I can get reactive. And then I have to check that. I know I'm self-aware. That's why self-awareness is empowerment, is the power to doing this work and dealing with fear and shame, is knowing yourself, doing that inner work. So I can go, oh, that was my 8-year-old self having a fit. Not feeling heard because I told you the same thing 3 times and you didn't hear me. And there's my inner child going, well, you don't hear me. You don't listen to me. Well, that's not on them. That's from my stuff. That's from my trigger. So I have to regulate through that. And then we can say, hey, what was going on for you? Because we know reactivity, there's unprocessed emotion. So if our children are reactive, I'm reactive, there's unprocessed emotion happening. And so I first will try to check that for myself. Go, okay, I'm feeling about 8 right now. Okay, honey, there's my honey sweetie coming into play.
Pumpkin.
To try to nurture that, because that's not my kid's job to nurture me. That's not my husband's job to nurture me. That's not my children's job for sure. I'm the one that's my job to nurture them. They're not here to nurture me. So I'm really clear that I've got to nurture myself so then I can nurture them through it. And that's not easy.
It isn't easy. And one thing that came up for me as you were talking about that is, it's not my wounded little girl at 8 or 10 or 4 or 14. It's not her fault either. I hear that a lot with clients as we begin to do this work, which I think is really the deepest level of healing work. I can't be upset with her. She was a little girl. He was a little boy, whatever. Those things that impacted her aren't typically her fault. And so part of that again becomes, am I upset with her? And I need to nurture her too before I can really let go and be fully nurtured and be fully present to nurture others.
Absolutely. I love how you put that. If anyone has any questions or wants us to dive deeper into something, please feel free to put that in the comments. And we can try to address those either today or in future lives that we do. So feel free to write those in the comments. I think the thing about fear and shame is we deal with it on a regular daily basis. And now in quarantine, it was already there, and now it's heightened. And so we want to speak into that this is good. It's not just going to disappear. So people think, well, I've done all this work and I still feel terrible about myself on certain days and times. I'm like, yeah, that's why that nurturing self, that's why that empathy and compassion gets you through dealing with hard, gets you through dealing with pain, gets you through dealing with loneliness and all the emotions of grief that you might be feeling. So let's talk a little bit about how to cope on a regular daily basis with fear and shame. We talked about empathy and compassion. We talked about the breathing. What else are ways that you feel are helpful to deal with fear and shame on a regular basis?
One thing that I really, I think I sometimes forget this, but every time I'm reminded of it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really brilliant, is we can't heal what we don't. How do you say it? You say it all the time. We have to name it in order to heal it, but it rhymes. And how do you say it?
The more you feel, the more you heal.
There you go. Thank you. I'm like, I don't know. It's rhyming words. But the more
I'm the queen of rhyming. I don't know where that came from, but I love a good rhyme.
Well, and this, I mean, usually it would help me remember, but it didn't that time. But the more we can call out what we're feeling and then feel through it, the more we're going to heal it. Emotions were designed to be temporary. They really were. Like the core emotions that keep us safe, that keep us informed, that keep us functioning at our best are designed to be temporary. I kind of liken them to messengers. They have a message for me when I can tune in and go, oh, there's fear knocking on my door. What does it want me to know? Oh, it wants me to know that, I am a little afraid that financially this might affect us. Okay, it needs me to know that maybe I need to budget better, that maybe I don't need to spend right now on Amazon, which is really hard for me, but maybe I don't. Maybe I need to wait to see what happens in the next six weeks, 6 months. That kind of fear is productive. And if I can tune into that, get the message from it, and just kind of go, okay, thank you. You'll come again, fear, but you can go now. I've received your message. I've received your information. I think that's what we're really trying to get to. And there is a lot of fear. Not one of us on this planet could have really worst case scenario this, right? Like none of us could have really, maybe scientists somewhere. The general public could not have worst case scenario planned for a global pandemic that was going to shut us down for 5-6 weeks longer, probably. And so none of us were prepared for this the way mentally we might have hoped. And so again, really working hard not to compare yourself to what you see on Facebook and Instagram. I know I sent you a little bit ragey text about Gwyneth Paltrow when she said, during this time, you should, I don't know what she said, write a book or create, I don't know. And I just wanted to punch her because I really was like, oh, Gwyneth, pumpkin. See there. I don't know what it is in you, Gwyneth, and your wounded little girl, but I am not going to write a book during the global pandemic. And that's okay. It's okay, right? And then I saw a TikTok this morning that was cracking me up. It was a mom did the split screen TikTok. And there's this mom, she had made these fresh tortilla chips and she was mixing up the guacamole for her kids' lunch in the moment. And she, and this other mom's throwing like Ritz crackers and just throwing stuff in. And I was like, that's both okay. You're both okay. Whatever you can do, it's okay. Right. And so lots of permission slips, lots of grace and empathy, lots of just really pulling yourself away from those things, the news, social media. I binge watched Call the Midwives and loved every minute of it. Maybe I was numbing some, but for me, like it really, there were some messages that got to land from that show. So not all Netflix is bad, right? Not all TV is bad. It's the amount we're using these things. If I am using them to really numb from my core emotions, there's no way that information or those messages are going to get to me. And then they're just piling up and they're piling up. And then I wonder why it feels so overwhelming.
And then I think that affects our immune system. When we suppress and repress, that all lives in the body. And so that weakens and diminishes our immune system. When we release and express, that helps strengthen that immune system because your body's not absorbing all those emotions. We're not stuffing it down, keeping it inside. We're releasing and we're processing through it, which of course boosts the immune system. And so it's a whole new world for some of us that haven't done the feeling work. Some people have never done the feeling work, but they're forced into it because we've cut away the busyness. Now, some people are still very busy and working and all that. We're not racing the kids around from here and there and everywhere. So there's more sense of having to be with the feelings as opposed to running and being busying our way through it. And so for some, the busyness that of hustling and bustling is slowing down, and we are having to connect to those emotions and sit with those emotions. And that can be uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable for a lot of us because we want to move away from it.
It will be comfortable. Every time I cry, I look at my husband and I'm like, oh, stupid emotions. And I know, like, I understand them and I get them and I understand the value, but every single time I cry, I'm just like, I hate this. I hate these emotions. And yet I give myself permission to do it because I know what will happen to me if I don't, if I stuff it, and I will become a one and done again. I will push people away. I will disconnect. I will want nothing to do with anything that feels threatening. And that's all of life in some capacity. And so, the things that are kind of coming up for me is, really that deep breathing. Where am I feeling this in my body? I encourage clients to give it qualities and characteristics. So when I feel that sickness in my stomach, I'm really sitting with it, and I'm going, oh, it's kind of like dark, and it's, it's thick, and it's kind of all over, and it just makes me want to vomit. Okay, now I'm really connected to what that emotion feels like and looks like in my stomach. I'm just going to sit and breathe and do in through my nose, out through my mouth breathing. And then, I might write about it. I don't journal. I take notes in my phone. I write Facebook posts to kind of clear space. So it doesn't have to look like traditional journaling. I Post-it notes, whatever it is, just get it out of your body onto paper somehow. And then just really focusing on, I need to be kind to myself. If my self-talk sounds like a bully on the playground, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it in a way that's going to be helpful at all. And so I need to slow that down and just say, I'm okay. I'll get through this. This is not comfortable. I've never done this before, or I don't do this very often, and I will get through this. I think those are sort of the key factors right now. I don't want to overwhelm everybody, with too much, but if you can just start practicing those few things and then begin to notice what difference is it making.
Absolutely. I think my tells for when I'm stuffing and I'm not feeling are I get irritable. Like everybody's annoying me. Like everything annoys me. Like I'm just irritable. I'm reactive. I'm annoyed. I can be short. And so I have to go, oh, there's my tells. So knowing your tells on that you're stuffing, numbing, moving away are really important. Those are some of mine. Or I feel like something really hurt me that normally doesn't hurt me that much. It could be hormones. It could be I haven't slept enough. I haven't eaten well. I haven't, taken care of myself. So I have to kind of check am I hungry? Am I tired? What's going on? Am I hormonal? I mean, these are things we have to check. And reactivity is a surefire way to know you're stuffing feelings down. Reactivity is a surefire way you're hitting something deeper that's probably unprocessed that needs some tending to. And so I'd encourage you to notice that reactivity without judging it, without making it right or wrong or good or bad or should or shouldn't, and allowing it to be curious about it. That is super helpful to get through this, because the minute you start judging yourself, that shame voice comes on, that story making comes on, you're going to stay stuck in those feelings and want to move away. You're going to want to go in the pantry. You're going to want to get the wine out. You're going to want to do all the things we do to move away from emotion. So know your tells and really tend to those in a real time close to in moment as possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you miss it in the moment, go back to it. Go back to it and just ask yourself, what did I miss? Oh, okay. Yeah. That, when he said that way, and sorry, my headphone came out. When he said that way, I took it this way. This was the story I wrote. Okay. If I don't let that hurt go now, 3 days later, 3 weeks later, then I'm just going to carry it with me. And next time it'll be even harder. So whenever you can acknowledge it and make sense of it a little bit, go back and feel through it, talk yourself through it, nurture yourself through it with just empathy and kindness. And I guarantee, I don't make many guarantees in life, but I guarantee it will feel better.
Absolutely. And I like to use Brene Brown's, the story I'm making up is, you don't really like me right now. You think I'm a terrible mother. This is to my spouse. I won't do this to my kids because it's not on them. Right. And then they're like, what? And maybe they do think that. And that's probably something else that's a deeper issue. Then you've got to work through that. You've got to get to the emotions of what's going on the inside. So that's another way the story I'm making up is, because you've got to watch your story. That is on you. That is something you can own as your own storytelling. And I think that's an important way to handle the fear and shame and move through it and get to the other side as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we thank you, everybody, for your time. You can watch this on the replay. You can send it out. You can talk it out with friends, family, your partner. We are hoping to do more of these. So if you're interested in more, feel free to send us topic ideas that you really want to hear about. We'd love to hear from you as we start this journey on Facebook Lives. I'm doing the Mental Health Mondays with Mayor Chris Jensen in Noblesville. You can go on the City of Noblesville Facebook page for that. And you can come right after that onto our Facebook page And if you want a deeper dive into how to work through a multitude of things as we're navigating life together and the hard together, come on over here. Everybody is welcome here. So feel free to come on over, and hopefully you get a nugget or two that's helpful and that you can provide some calm and peace in the midst of kind of this uncertainty. So thank you so much, Rachel, for your time. Is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
I think we covered it, and I'm just looking forward to people who need this information. If they can just be open to receiving it for their own healing, it's gonna make a huge difference.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you want to watch this later, it will be available on the Pathways to Healing Counseling Facebook page. And then we are going to start a YouTube channel. And then I will load that onto the YouTube channel as well once we get that up and running. So thank you so much, everybody. Get out, enjoy the sunshine, at least for today. If you're watching this on the sunny day. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.